Well, thank you, John, and I want to just say that you and Tom have made City and State a must-read across New York. I don't know about the rest of you, but I wake up, put on my glasses, and go right to City and State. Then I realize I'm not in City and State. But what I like about what they're doing is this isn't only about reporting the news, it's creating events like this that are so critical to talking about the issues of the day. And today's theme, immigration, is an important one at a very important time because it's about the fabric of our neighborhoods and the financial success of our city, especially in this time of Muslim bans and border walls and tragedy. Yesterday, as you know, a horrible tragedy took place. We lost 8 New Yorkers, innocent New Yorkers. Many people were wounded. Only the heroic work of the NYPD and the world's best responders prevented the damage from being even worse. The survivors and families of the victims have our full support during this difficult time, and we will always stand with them and stand together against the face of terrorism. We keep them in our thoughts and prayers. But here's something we cannot do in the aftermath of this tragedy. We can never let forces in this country use the actions of a single individual to scapegoat an entire people. We cannot let the extreme of America exploit tragedy for an extreme political goal and use terror to undermine our values and change who we are. Closed-mindedness can't win, and intolerance can't prevail. But so often since November 8th, we have a president who has tried to appeal to our prejudices. It's coming from the top. Our diversity and our openness has come into question from our own White House, targeting and scapegoating immigrants, insults against our neighbors, mass deportations, and it comes from someone who calls himself a businessman. Well, if he was really the businessman he says he is, then he would know that companies with more diverse workforces perform better financially. He would know that diversity is not just something that we talk about, it's a tremendous asset for our city and for our country. In fact, I would argue as controller, it's a necessary ingredient to thrive in a global economy. It's actually a strategy for financial success. Now think about our city. 3.3 million immigrants from 150 countries speaking 180 languages. 46% of New York City's employed population, 46%, almost 40% of the city's total population, half of all workers in core New York City sectors are foreign-born. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. About half of everyone working in tech, finance, medicine, and entertainment, half are foreign-born. And that means that without the diversity of our population and our people, without that diversity, New York City would be a third-rate economy. We would not be a global economy. We wouldn't lead the world. And that's what I find so troubling about this White House. They want to roll back the financial foundation of our city and our community and the very people who make this economy move. Isn't that hard to believe? It's pretty amazing that on that level, this is what we're down to. But we have a fight on our hands. We cannot sit back and lose this country. We in New York have to fight back with substance, with ideas. And here's one thing I think we can do to make a difference. Today in New York, we have 670,000 New Yorkers who are currently eligible to become naturalized citizens. 670,000. But they haven't applied. They haven't taken that final step. And it's largely because of the costs. The fees associated with citizenship application are up 500% since 1989. It's now $725 just to turn in an application for citizenship. And when you add legal fees, English classes, and more, it runs into thousands of dollars. Keep in mind that over half of those eligible to naturalize live below 200% of our poverty line. So these costs are a huge burden. People who want citizenship literally have to choose between clothes for the kids or an application fee. They have to choose between that rent payment or can they get themselves on a path to citizenship. So this is no longer something we should close our eyes to. We should start putting our money where our mouth is. And that's why we should create a public-private partnership, a fund to offset the costs of the applications for those up to 300% of the poverty line. Think about what that would do. You could start today on that earned path to citizenship. Now, we ran the numbers, that's what controllers do, and with just a $20 million infusion, 35,000 New Yorkers could become citizens. And that wouldn't just change lives. It would send a message to the world about who we are, what we value, and who we value. Because we want people to come to America, we want people to come to our city, and we want them to stay and work to build our economy for generations to come. So this matters not just to all of us here today, to the people who've been here a long time. This matters for our children. And I remember very clearly one morning, I was on my way as Manhattan Borough President to a graduation event that I speak at. Borough presidents, one of our key jobs is to speak at graduations. And I was especially popular at 5th grade graduations. This is very serious because I'm still very popular at 5th grade graduations. In fact, if you graduated from the 5th grade between 2006 and 2013, I was probably your graduation speaker. But I remember one morning, I was getting ready to speak at a graduation, and I happened to look, they put you on the stage and the kids are in the front, and I looked down and I was watching these 5th graders. They were from every background imaginable. So many languages and culture, you could see it in their eyes. And I remember saying to myself, oh my God, this really is America. This is our city. This is who we are. And it wasn't because I had to make a speech on immigration or diversity. It was just telling to me that these kids were right here driving their future at this amazing public school. And the fact is, these are the kids that have a leg up in life because they're getting a great 5th grade education, but what they're really getting is the interplay between all of the diversity that they have to offer, different languages, culture, all of this playing out at the earliest ages. These are our next CEOs. These are the future doctors, the lawyers. These are the elected officials, the next controller, mayor. It's all happening before our eyes. And they do not have the hang-ups that so many of their parents do. They just want to learn together, be together, and live together. And this is about our future. Because immigration is the great tradition of our city. Generations of immigrants come here for a better life. They're graduating from our schools. They're building our city. That's why today's discussion is so important. And I would argue, and I thank City and State for this, I would argue that we should be having these discussions every day, in the morning, at noon, in the evening, because we have got to make sure that our city stays whole, even in these difficult times, from a president who attacks immigrants every day, to terrorists who want to change the dynamic in our peace-loving city. This is something that we can play a role in if we energize and have our backs. And one of the great moments I had in this struggle was when I went to a huge rally against the Muslim ban. There were thousands of people from all over the place. People of all different backgrounds came together for that rally. And I realized as someone of Jewish faith, if I didn't stand up and protect Muslim brothers and sisters, then who would protect me? Because they're going to come for me. That is the tradition. They come for the people who are alone. They come for the people they think are most vulnerable. And one of the things we've been able to prove in this city since that fateful November day is nobody is alone. We are in this together. We are in the same boat. It's going to get rocky. The water's going to rise. We're going to have a lot of struggle with this. But if we can build our coalition by educating, learning, and organizing, I'm telling you, this city is going to be the model for the world in terms of diversity, and that's why we're here this morning. Thank you very much for allowing me to open it up today. Thank you. Thank you.
And I think we have a few minutes for questions. If there are any questions from the audience, write them on your card. Alexis will be walking around, grab just a couple of those. I just had a question myself first to start off with. So obviously New York City is a fairly progressive city, supportive of immigrants, but there's entire swaths of the population of the country as a whole that see these terrorist attacks and think there is a need for more security, for tighter borders. And so how do you balance, being welcoming to immigrants, but also making it a safe country? What would you tell people from, say, Nebraska or, where I'm from, or parts of the state that voted for Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, we have to talk about the facts here. Unfortunately, the model, unfortunately, for a lot of this terrorism is actually people who look like me, right? And a lot of the terrorism, the gun violence, and the tragedy that we're seeing are people who are not immigrants, but they're people who actually are part of this country because guns are readily available, we don't deal with illness, and I don't think we should allow anyone to categorize immigrants as terrorists because it's just not true. The truth is we have bad people in the world of all different backgrounds, and I have zero tolerance for people who would bring harm to us. That gentleman who allegedly did this attack yesterday is in custody and will never see the light of day eventually. That's how you deal with terrorism. Obviously, you understand that. But I think what I worry about is that we get hit twice. We have an attack, as we had yesterday, and then people, as I mentioned in my presentation, people who want to take advantage of that will end up trying to exploit the immigrants, different communities, and we cannot let that happen under any circumstances. And that takes education, that takes all of us coming together and making sure that we do not hold any group of massive people to that, because then the right-wing Trumpites win on many different fronts, and their facts are totally wrong.
Any questions? If you have a card, if you could raise it up. Looks like we have at least one back there. Any other questions? Okay, just 1 second. Okay, the question is, as a New Yorker, what can we do? Our senators are with us, our local government is with us. How do we influence the country for change? Similar to the question I posed.
So, well, it's a little different because you were talking about the different, what do we have to do for immigration? I would argue now this is about old-fashioned political organizing. Look, on one level, there's nothing wrong with this country that one good election can't cure. So everybody has to start thinking about 18 and 20 because this is why we're in this situation. We didn't win the last election. The wrong people stayed home. We weren't energized. There have been books written about this, conferences written about this, but I want to be forward-thinking. Everyone has to be political. Everyone has to be a participant. I don't think we should just show up when it comes time to participate in the presidential election, but everybody, once you finish reading City and State in the morning, you should immediately engage on the city council level, the state legislative level, the congressional level. We have a lot of energized people out there, but we have to stop complaining, get off the couch, get off social media, and get into the streets. That is something that we have to do. And as a kid, back in the day when it was 40-some-odd years ago, when I was a little boy, I went around with my cousin at the time to every anti-war rally, every impeach Nixon rally, every rally on women equality. I would follow my cousin Bella Abzug, who was a former feminist congresswoman, around on Saturdays. If you think this is normal, you can say it now, right? Because that was the moment at that time. The good news is now as we go to these rallies, now they let me speak, but what I see at these rallies are, one, tremendous diversity, people of all different backgrounds at the same event. And second, I also see the next generation that's going to continue that tradition. Young men and women who are not going to surrender the progress that their parents and grandparents fought for through the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the peace and justice movement. So what I would just say simply is when you're not out campaigning and knocking on doors and registering voters, that you get to the rallies, you participate. There's a lot of organizations. Steve is here. He'd gladly sign you up for a tour of duty, but this is the new world, and we have to be ready for it.
Just one last question. What progress action are we taking toward funding the public-private fund you mentioned in your remarks?
Well, I've had very constructive meetings with City Hall and people who will ultimately make these decisions, the Mayor's Fund and others. I hope that within the community of government that there will be a path or an avenue to do this, and I'm hoping to work with the city government, the city council. I do think that this fund, this private-public partnership, could be something that is not just about our city, but nationally, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to say to people, we are the diverse city, and we are a diverse country, and we want you to be citizens. You want to be citizens. So how do we break down the barriers? Trump is putting up the walls to citizenship. We have to do everything we can to break those walls down, and the best way to do that is to fund people's ambition to be a citizen of this country, for themselves, for their children, and this is not the only idea. We could talk about our DACA children, we could talk about all of the different issues that face immigrants, and if more that we break down those barriers, that really means we're breaking down the walls. Thank you very much. Enjoy the conference today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comptroller. Let's give him another hand.